Okay, great. Thanks, Terry.
No problem. I'll be in the background, but I'll still be here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. I don't see anyone, but I'm guessing I have a number of people trying to make sense of what's been going on the last 15, 20 minutes or so while we've been trying to fix this technical problem. But at least now I'm able to share the screen. I'm Shamim Khan, and as Terry told you, I teach at Columbus State University. I'm one of the professors of computer science there. And we switched to the Python language for our CS1 class about 7 years ago. We used to use Java, and Java is not a simple language to learn. Let me ask you, first of all, even though Terry will have to help me with the telling me what the responses are. How many of you have had any experience with computer programming?
So we got some saying some. Let's see, about 2 people saying, 3 people saying some saying yes, a little. Okay. Someone did some SQL.
Okay. Some
know Python, HTML, and CSS.
Okay.
Some know Java and Python.
Okay, great. So it looks like, as I had expected, most, if not all, would have very little or no programming experience. So anyone who has done a bit of Python?
Yes, a few people are saying Python. One saying Python is my baby.
Okay. Yeah.
Python with GIS. Yes.
Right. Well, thank you. So why Python? As I mentioned, we switched to Python because Python is such a nice language for a beginner who is just starting with learning to program. It's simple, but it's powerful. And we will see how Python is really user-friendly, especially compared with a language like Java. Right now, there are these 3 or 4 languages that are at the top of the table of languages being used all over the world, and Python has become one of them. And depending on how you measure the most widely used language, Python is either number 1 or number 2. Python, Java, and C++ are the top 3. JavaScript is also used a lot, but then JavaScript is in a slightly different league. It's used mainly for web programming, whereas Python is an all-purpose object-oriented language like Java and C++. And so let's start. First question, I guess, and please feel free to ask any question, even though I can't hear you. Terry will pass it on to me. Feel free to interrupt. So we want to start learning Python. So what do we need? We need the language on our computer. But these days, there are more than one ways of doing that. We can install Python. We can download a Python interpreter, install it on our computer like we are used to whenever we want to use something new, a new app. We can get the interpreter. We can download it from python.org, which is the official website for the Python language, right? Python.org. Let me get the pointer. Okay. And the other option is just not download anything. You can just start up your web browser, and you can use what we call an integrated development environment, or IDE. And when you download the Python interpreter and install it on your computer, you usually get a built-in IDE. If we have time, we'll have a go at that, see how you can actually do that. So we need an IDE. What's an IDE? An IDE, when you open it, just looks like a text editor, a simple text editor that allows you to type in your code, edit it, and then run it by running the interpreter. So we can get an IDE in the web browser these days, and that's exactly what we will be doing. Here we can see so many different ways of using Python, different IDEs, and the one we will be using is not listed here, but I found that one to be one of the simplest ones. It's called Replit. We usually call it Replit. The website is https://repl.it. So I'd like you to go to this website, as I will be right now. Okay, so I'm switching back to Firefox. Okay. https://replit.
And I've added the link in the chat for those who want to just click.
Right. Thanks, Terry. And you will see this screen. And on the top right-hand corner, we see the button Start Coding. Okay. We also see the Start Coding button down here. Now just click on that. Okay. And it shows us a list of languages to pick from. So it's not just for Python. It allows you to see all these languages, different versions of Python. Python 2.7 is an older version. These days we are using Python 3 point something. I think the most recent one is 3.8. So we will just click on Python. Okay. And we get this window. One of the buttons says create REPL. I have not yet figured out what REPL really stands for, but it's pretty useful anyway. So let's try it. It says REPL created. Now you get this window. All right. So this is the REPL window. Everything we type in now will be typed into this file main.py, py for Python. So all Python code is saved in a file with this .py extension. Okay, I will just to make room, I will minimize this side panel. Okay, so we have more space, workspace, and on the right, the dark screen shows us the outputs that's produced when we run the code that we type in on this left-hand side. Okay, so that's Replit, ready for us to start coding. Now let me go back to the presentation. Okay, so we've already been through that, start coding. So in case you just missed it, that's the website. Start coding, select Python, and then click on the button, create REPL. Okay, so now if you've learned or had a go at learning a language, one of the first things you most probably have done is to print the message, hello world. It's kind of a standard ritual. The first thing you do in a new language you're trying to learn is to try and print this message, hello world. So that is exactly what we will do. Now, let's go back to our Replit window, and I'll just type print hello world. Now, Replit tries to be helpful at every step, and sometimes that can be a bit confusing if we are new. So as soon as I typed print and the open parentheses, all this help pops up and tries to give us ideas, and that's what can be confusing. But let's try to pay not too much attention to that. So that's the line. That's a single line or a statement. And now to run it, just click on the run button. And there's the output. Hello world. Okay. Now, a little bit of explanation is in order. Print is not exactly for printing. A print is really for displaying things, and usually print will display whatever you put in the parentheses following that word print. Okay, so print is what's called a function in Python, and we'll come across a few in the coming minutes. Okay, so the job of the print function is to display whatever we give it, whatever we give to this print function within the parentheses. So in this case, we gave it this message to be displayed, and it very obligingly did that, okay, when we clicked on the run button. So that's our first program, our hello world in Python, okay? So it doesn't take much to just get going with our first program. So just a bit of background information. For those new to programming, each line of code that we write in a program, we call it a statement. Okay.
Dr. Khan, there was a comment from Rebecca. She mentioned that APCSA teacher's Facebook page says a REPL is a read, evaluate, print loop.
Read, evaluate, print loop. Oh, thank you. That's interesting.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I had no idea. Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, so some of the statements may go over more than one line, but typically each line of code is a statement. Okay, so now try writing something else. So write another print statement in Replit. Okay, just output a message, display a message, anything you like. Okay, just to get a feel for it. So you can just, instead of the hello world, you can delete that and you can just type in any message in there. Okay, so you can just type simple. Okay. Or is it? Okay. And okay. So I guess you have your own message, which is absolutely fine. Now let's move on. Okay, so we have to get introduced to the concept of variables as soon as we start learning to code, because we want to have information that we want to process, and we must have a way of storing information or data. Okay, so That's what variables are for. So we can conceptualize a variable as a memory location which is used to store some value, some item of information, and the variable itself is referred to using a name. So my name is actually the tag or the name of a variable, but usually we just say my name is the variable, but the variable is just the location in memory. My name is sort of the tag we attach to it to be able to refer to it. Okay, so what's going on in this statement? We have this equal sign. The equal sign is what we call an assignment operator. Its job is to take a value. Now the value can be anything. For example, the value here is my name. Okay, it can be a number, it can be a word, and it just takes this value on the right hand side and it assigns it to the whatever appears on the left hand side, and that should usually be a variable. Okay, so now once this statement is executed, okay, the variable my name will be created and it will have the value Shamim assigned to it. Okay, and then to check that it really has that value, we can execute this statement. Okay, so let's try that. Okay. So my name. Okay. And print is, now we're going to give our print function two things now to work on. First one is these few words. In fact, we call these a string, but more on strings in a minute. The second item we give it is the variable called my name. Next, REPL prompts us with suggestions, and I just selected what it suggested because that's what we need. Okay, and we can then run it. Now you can clear your window, the output window, by just clicking on this cross, and it's ready, and we can now run it. And let's just look at the output for a second. So that the highlighted part in the output, it resulted because we gave print these words to print. So it did that. And then after the comma, we gave it a second object. That was the variable my name. So it fetches that variable and it prints the content of that variable. Now this variable my name, we had already assigned it the value, which is my name. And so when it tries to print its content, this is what comes out. This is what gets displayed. Okay? And so this is the result. So this is quite common. You will have multiple items given to the print function separated by commas. Okay. All right. Let's go back. So print is a function, one of many that come with the Python language. Built in, we can also define our own functions and use them. So what's a function? A function is just a collection of statements that are used frequently. So instead of having to rewrite them every time we want to perform the same task, like printing something, we just have the instructions for printing grouped together and give that group a name. So the group of instructions, lines of code that does the printing are grouped together and given the name print and called a function with the name print. Okay, so functions, the name of a function is followed by a pair of parentheses. So we have that, and we have the closing, oops, sorry. The closing parentheses.
A question from Layla was about semicolons. Are they not needed at the end of statements in Python?
No, that's one of the nice things about Python is that you end a line by simply hitting the enter key. That indicates the end of line. Whereas in languages like Java or C++, you have to put a semicolon. And forgetting to put a semicolon, as you would agree, those of you who've tried another language like Java or C++, it's quite a common mistake and can be pretty frustrating. So no problem with that. You can put a semicolon, that's fine, especially if you're used to putting a semicolon to indicate the end of a line, but you don't have to. And that saves typing and also reduces the chance of forgetting the semicolon. So, so here we have an example of the use of the variable. Now try something yourself. Create another variable. Let's call it my city. My city. And display a message that says where you live. Okay, so you will, the first line will be my city, and then you will have the name of your city within this pair of quotes. Okay, and then a print statement will have two items separated by comma. The first item will go something like the name of my city is, and then you will have the variable my city. All right. So how is Replit going with you? Is it behaving? Are you getting the expected outputs?
Let's see what some of the chats are. Works great, no problem here. Great. So far, so good. Yes, it's working well. How do I put the period at the end?
Oh, okay. So if you wanted to do that, let me change the example code I use for my name. You just add another item, which is the period. Okay, so this is how you would do it. Okay, the comma as usual, followed by a period within quotes. Okay, so hit run. Okay, so there you go, the period.
One also mentioned they used NetBeans before, but this is easier.
Yeah, NetBeans is the heavy-duty industrial-grade IDE that's used a lot. Yeah, so you will probably end up using something like NetBeans later on if you get into serious Python programming. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so anything that we put within the quote signs, like my name, the name of your city, here we have the name of our state, Georgia. Anyone from outside Georgia attending this session?
You see Wisconsin, Oregon.
Wow.
Argentina.
Oh, wow. I was
Virginia.
expecting Alabama or Tennessee or
Virginia.
Florida.
Virginia.
Okay.
Sorry, Virginia, New York.
Oh,
Another
wonderful.
Argentina.
Wonderful.
Istanbul.
Yeah, wonderful. Great to have you all join us from such faraway places.
Yes, Oklahoma.
Nice, nice. Okay, so put in the name of your state, change my state to my country, and put in the name of your country. Yeah, and then you'll see it works the same way. So whatever you put within a pair of quotes, we call it a string. So this is standard jargon. I mean, this is not just for Python. For other languages like C++ or Java, JavaScript, that's what we call a string, a group of characters. It can be multiple words separated by spaces, or it can be just one word. It can even be a single character. It can even be a blank. You just have the space bar pressed once. You don't see anything. You just have the pair of quotes. Even that is a string. Okay, so change this code, my state, assign the value Georgia to my state, change that to replace the name of the state of Georgia with a multi-word greeting. Okay, with multiple words separated by spaces, but everything within the pair of quotes. By the way, it can be double quotes or single quotes. Both go in Python.
Tammy asked about variables. Tammy Sharp, she wanted to know, would you add to the top of the code each time?
No, that's another of those nice features I really like about Python. Python is what's called a dynamically typed language. Unlike Java, you do not have to declare your variables at the top of your program or before you use your variables. The purpose of declaring a variable is to tell your system, tell your interpreter or compiler that I'm going to use this variable, the type of this variable is this. With Python, when you use the variable, you are doing two things. You are also, as well as using it, you are also declaring the variable, defining the variable. Okay, so here I'm saying I want to create a variable called my state. Okay, and at the same time, as soon as that variable is created, I want the value, the string, this group of characters, which is the name of a state, to be assigned to my variable. Okay, now, so that's what makes Python so appealing, because you save lines of typing. You don't have to have a separate line to define your variable. You can just declare it, define it, and assign a value to it at the same time. Okay, so you did your greeting, a variable to store your greeting, and printed it out. Yep. Okay. Let us know if there is any issues. Let's move on. Now, programs are useful only if they are able to interact with us, the user. And how does a program interact? It should be able to read in values that we type in, or read in values that we have stored in a file, maybe a data file, and it is able to read it in. So input is that process of reading in information that we either type in at the keyboard or have stored in a file. Okay, so let's try input, the most common way of input, that is typing something in and expecting our program to take whatever we type in and do something with it. Okay, so what this line, Okay, what this line is trying to do is accept whatever we type in at our keyboard, okay, and assign what we type in to this variable called today's weather. Okay, so let's try these two lines. Type in these two lines, see what happens. So let's change that. Today's weather did I have? I will just put input. I'll explain what this input means. Okay. Let's try it first. It'll be today's weather today. Okay. Print it will be, comma, and then today's weather. I'll just copy and paste, comma, and today's weather today. Okay. Think I got it right. Hope. Okay, let's run it. Now, nothing seems to happen. We see this blank screen. It's actually running. The program is still running. It's expecting us to input, give it some input, type something in. So I'm wondering, with so many places in so many different locations, so many different countries, what the weather is like at wherever you are. So just type that in. Sunny, cloudy, rainy, foggy, cold, hot. Okay. Where I am right now, it's beautiful outside. It's sunny afternoon. So I will just type in sunny. Okay. And hit enter. And it says it will be sunny today. Okay. I wonder what it said to you. Now, let's try and explain what went on here. So this input, and this is another function. Did you notice that the input and the print, they appear in a different color, blue? The rest of the code, some of it is in black, some of it is in red. Okay. Input is blue or purple. Not sure. Looks more purple to me. This color coding is actually designed to help us make fewer mistakes. Okay. So whatever IDE you use, it doesn't have to be Replit, and they will have their own color scheme to try and help us. Okay. So in our case, black, anything in black is a variable. Okay. Usually a variable. Okay. Now the color scheme, as I said, may be different in a different, but as long as you're using the same IDE. Now the strings, anything enclosed in double quotes, they are red. Okay, they're red. So that tells us what we're looking at is actually a string. And the functions are not red, not black, they're blue or purple. Okay, so input is a function. So what the input function does is it just waits for us to type something in the keyboard and hit the enter button, the enter key, and then it will read it in, okay? And it will store whatever we typed in into the variable, which is on the left-hand side. So now today's weather, the variable today's weather has the value sunny because I typed in sunny, Remember, right here, I had typed in sunny. I took that value, stored it in that variable, today's weather, and then it moved down to the next line, okay? The execution of a program is sequential. It starts at the top line, then executes it, and then once that's done, it moves down to the next line, line number 2, which is the print statement. And the print statement printed out that message. Okay? All right. Moving on. So that was our input function. Okay. Now, when we write code, we know what we're doing. Well, we should, at least, ideally. Now, somebody else reading our code may not. And they may get a bit confused, unsure what we meant by that line of code. So it's always helpful to add a line of comment sometimes. Especially this, if the code is a bit hard to follow. Why did the programmer have this line of code? If you think that your reader will wonder, then why not help them by inserting a comment, which is an explanation about the code. So this is a comment line using the hashtag, the hash symbol starts a comment line. So it says, stores a string of characters. I think I meant in a variable. Okay. Yeah, I missed that in. Okay. So, so this statement actually stored this string of character, which was a name, into this variable. And now the next line of code, see the code is in red, the comment is in blue. Here again, we have this line that we had before, but now input has something in it, a string. This string is the prompt telling the user what to expect, what it expects from the user. Okay. And it didn't have that. When we ran that program, we didn't have anything within the pair of parentheses after input like we have here. We have all that. Okay. And that's the prompt. It's helpful to tell the user what is the user expected to type. Okay. So now just modify your program that you had, modify the code, just write that prompt, okay, and see it's now much more user-friendly. Okay, so we'll say, what was the line? What's the forecast? Let's add a bit more today. Okay. What is the forecast for today? Okay. Now we'll see that it will prompt what's the forecast for today, and then the cursor, this white rectangle, is resting there. That's where it's expecting us to type the input. And let's say I change the forecast to something not as cheerful. Okay.
There's a question about strings. Using it inside the input is the same as using a print before?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Good question. Yeah. Just like for the print function, and here too, we see a string, in fact, two strings, which are given to the string function. Input is also given a string, which is usually the prompt to inform the user about what the user is expected to type. Yes.
And there is another question about automatic spacing.
Yeah.
Laura says, I wouldn't want a space before the period.
Or you don't want a space before the period. Okay, yeah, we can do that. We can do that. Avoid the comma. Okay, so today, okay, let's say I want, well, we can do that like that. Oops, like that, and okay, run it. Okay, or I think she probably meant the example that we had before with the print function.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So here, what we would do is we will use what's called string concatenation. Let me quickly do that. Okay. So let's say there is any. Okay. So and it will be it will be okay. Instead of adding the period, if we really want to give it as a separate argument, okay, we can use a string concatenation. Okay. So just going back to that example. Okay, I better use this example. Okay, so if I put a period here, period, sorry. Okay, let's see what it does. Okay, so we don't want that. Okay, so what we will do, let's see. There you go. Okay, so this is what we want. The period right after the value of this variable weather. Okay. The comma separator automatically adds a space. It didn't used to do that in earlier versions of Python. And people would forget to add a space because words would all appear squashed together without spaces. We would have to remember to put a space like, like here, we would have to put a space there. Now we no longer have to do it because, separating the items using commas automatically puts in a space, which can be undesirable in this case. We didn't want the space between the value of the variable sunny and the period. So what do? We use the plus operator, which is called the concatenation operator, which joins together two or more strings to create a single string. So it simply joined the dot string with the first part of the string, which is the it will be sunny is the first part, and then plus period means join the period at the end. Okay, add the period at the end. And that's exactly what it did. And of course, no spaces there. Okay.
Laura said, thank you, Dr. Khan.
You're very welcome. Now, Harry, you'll have to tell me when I'm approaching the finishing time, because I don't have a clock. The screen is not showing me any time.
And I'm sorry I didn't update you, but one of the participants asked if we could extend the time to make up for the technical difficulties we had earlier. And so I was able to get it extended until 5:45.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so that will make up for the lost time.
Yeah, so we're at 5:10 now, 5:09, 5:10.
Okay, 5:45.
Yes.
Okay, great. Right, so yeah, then I don't have to rush things through as much as I was planning to. Okay, so now let's go back and take a step back and think about what a program really is and how it works, what it does. A program is really a sequence of instructions or statements or lines of code in execution. Okay, now what does a program typically do? Typically, a program starts off by inputting something. Well, it may start off by displaying a message to start with, but that's optional. But the main task it starts off with is to input something, input a value of a variable, or input multiple values for multiple variables, either from the keyboard or from a file through the network. It inputs something, okay? And the next thing it does is it processes the input values, okay? So that's the complicated part, okay? That's where the algorithm comes in. The algorithm, the organized, ordered set of steps to solve any problem, okay? So the algorithm executes here. And then once all the calculations have been done to solve the problem, we have the result. It's time to display or to write it into a file. Okay, so it can be displayed on a screen or it can be written out to a file for long-term storage. We can open that file and we can use the results of our program execution whenever we want to. If it simply displays on a screen, that's what print does. That's nice to look at. But once the program executes, we move on and whatever it did is lost. So usually, unless it's a very interactive type of program, and a lot of programs are like that, it ends up sending the output to a file somewhere. Okay, so input followed by process followed by output. Okay, the three broad steps or phases of program execution. So to use a rather simplistic example, here we have a few lines of code, a small program which inputs two whole numbers, two integer numbers, and adds them and displays their sum. Okay, so we have some idea of how to get a value from the user using the input function. Okay, so there it is, the input function. Okay, and we are going to have to store that the numbers somewhere, and so we have variables, and we have two variables because we are going to store two numbers, and we usually name variables to make them meaningful, so that their purpose is made clear as far as possible within the limitations of the number of characters that we usually have in a variable. Okay, so I called it, this is the first number, so I call it num1. Okay, the second number I call num2 for number 2. All right. There is a temptation to use very cryptic variable name like x, y, or a, or b. Sometimes we do that when we are feeling a bit lazy, but when their meaning is so obvious that it doesn't matter if we have a single character cryptic name or we have a meaningful name with 12 characters. So yeah, so we have num1 for the first number, num2 for the second number. Now, so this statement, you will see that this input statement has something around it. Okay, the whole input statement, input and the prompt, type in the value of the first number, itself is enclosed within this pair of parentheses, this open parenthesis and this closed parenthesis. So that means we are taking the whatever input is getting for us and giving it to something else. So who are we giving the whatever input is getting from the user? We are giving it to another function. This function is called int. Int, I-N-T. Int is for integer. Okay. So, and you can see int is followed by its own pair of parentheses. So each function name is followed by a pair of parentheses. Input followed by its open parentheses, closed parentheses. Int has its open parentheses, its closed parentheses. Okay. And so what does int do? Int takes whatever the input gets. Okay. Input gets the number that we type in and converts it into a whole number. Well, aren't we typing in a number already? Yes and no. We are typing in a number like 5 or 99 or 0, but that number is actually, as it happens, everything we type in at the keyboard is supplied or interpreted as a string. So even if we type in the number 10, it won't be looked at by the program as the number 10. It will be looked at by the program as a string consisting of the character 1 followed by the character 0. Now that does sound strange, doesn't it? But that's how it is. Everything that we type in at our keyboard goes into our program as a string. But 10 is not really a string. It's not the name of something. It's actually a value, a numerical value. So we need to convert that string consisting of the two characters, 1 followed by 0, into a number 10, into the number 10. And that is done by giving that string returned by this input function, the string 10, to the function int, which will convert it into the number 10 or whatever the number is. Okay, so that's what the input function is. Sorry, the int function is. I know it's a little confusing as we are learning more and more new things within these few minutes, but we'll just take our time, look at examples, and hopefully that will help. Okay, So we got our two numbers, num1 and num2. Try typing in this code, see what you get. And we now have another statement, which is actually the processing part. The processing involved here is simply the calculation of the sum. And we do that as you would expect, add num1 to num2. So the right-hand side results in the sum, and we assign that to the variable sum on the left-hand side. So we have three variables in action in this bit of code, num1, num2, sum. All the variables appearing on the left-hand side. And all the action, okay, like inputting values, doing the calculations, they appear on the left-hand side, and the results are then assigned to the variable on the left-hand side. So sum, after this line is executed, sum ends up with the sum of these two numbers. So all you got to do is print it out, okay? Which is easy. We've done this multiple times already today. Sum of the two numbers is, okay, sum. So the new thing here is the use of the int function to convert an input typed in at the keyboard and received as a string into a whole number or an integer. Okay, so did everybody get their sums right? Okay.
Got some yeses. We also got about 4 folks, Melissa, Mark, Sunny, and Tammy, that are very thankful for your explanations and how detailed you are.
That's great. That's great to hear. Thank you. Okay, so let's change the code that you just typed in and ran successfully. Change it to display the difference of the two numbers and change the message also. So instead of the plus, you should have a minus sign to get the difference of the two numbers, and then just write. And the variable name also should change to make sense. It's not a sum anymore, it's the difference. So we will just say difference of the two numbers is, and then we'll have the actual difference, which is stored in this variable, not sum. We'll have a different variable, difference. Okay. All right. How did that go?
Looks like everyone's doing well.
Great. Okay. Now on to something new again. I also like to say something exciting all the time. As I hear the groans in my class, trying to cheer things up. Okay. So again, we heard that we write programs to do something useful for us. And the first thing to make a program useful is to be able to interact with it, give it input, make it accept our input, do something useful, do some calculations, produce some results, and give it back to us. That is, do the output. Now, that's good, but to be really useful, a program has to be able to make decisions. Okay, make decisions. What do we mean by that? Well, usually the program statements are executed one line at a time in sequential order. So the statement in line 1 gets executed first. Once that's done, the execution happens with line 2, then line 3, line 4. Sometimes we reach a fork. Just like a fork in the road, we are faced with a choice of doing or not doing something. Okay, so doing it is one way we could go. Not doing anything is the other option. So that's what we mean by the fork in the road. So, and that's when we need to make a decision. And programs must be able to make decisions if they are to do something useful for us. And that's what makes a program intelligent and more human-like. Okay, so here we have two numbers input by the users. Okay, now here I'm being lazy. I just had A for the name of the first variable and B for the name of the second variable. Please don't do it. Please don't follow my example. Okay, so I said if I have a line starting with if, okay, and it says if A greater than B, colon, print A is larger than B. Okay, so let me go and type something in. Okay, now this is what happens with Replit, and it's giving me a message, failed to connect, retrying. This is when you are using a web-based app. This is one price we have to pay, is that we are at the mercy of our networks and the traffic. Okay, there you go. We're back. Okay. All right. So I had A equals input.
Angela said sum is a function in Python used to add. But then in this example,
actually, sum is not a function. We can.
Well, in this example.
In this example,
Yeah.
It's not a. You can write a function called sum, but here sum is just a variable. Just a variable for storing the sum.
Angela has something specific with her code. Are you able to look at her chat just momentarily? She has actual code that would be hard to read to you and understand without having to see it.
The problem I have is I don't see anything. As soon as I started sharing my screen, all I can see is my own presentation.
Well, Angela, if you'll be willing to wait toward the end, we'll address that.
Okay. Yes, we can do that. Okay, so so let's go back to Replit. Give me value of A, B, okay, so we now have the two values read in. Then we're saying if A is greater than B, okay, colon. And notice when I typed in the colon on this line and hit the enter key, the cursor moved down to the next line as expected, but the cursor is not lined up. See, it's indented a few spaces. I think about 4 spaces. 1, 2, actually no, 2 spaces indented. Okay. And that happened automatically because of the colon that I typed in, because this is what we call an if statement, okay? An if statement, which allows our program to choose between alternatives or make decisions. So if A is greater than B, we do one thing, okay? Print A is greater than B. Or A is larger than B. Okay. So if I run it, let me clear the output area and run. Give me the value of A, okay. 2, give me the value of B, 3, nothing happened. Why did nothing happen? Well, something would happen, that is, something would get displayed. That's how we know that something happened. We know something happened when something gets displayed, right? Since nothing got displayed, we felt like, did the program even run? I don't see anything as output. Well, the program actually did run. It did get in the two values, and you can prove that by printing the values of A and B just by themselves. You will see that they were read in. But then we came to this line, if A is greater than B, okay? But is A greater than B here? The value of A is 2, the value of B is 3. So is A greater than B?
Marsha said 2 is not greater than 3.
Right. So obviously A is not greater than B. Not the A that we have here, not the B. Given the two A's and B's, with the values that we typed in, A is definitely not greater than B. So that means this condition, okay, and I repeat the word condition, okay, because if statements have these conditions. The word if is followed by a condition, okay? The condition here is A greater than B. And we just found that given the two values that I typed in, this condition is definitely not true. So if this condition is not true, whatever follows the colon, okay, the indented statements will be ignored, If this condition is true, then the statement, this print statement would be executed. So let's try again, okay? Let's run it again. This time, let's try to make the condition true, okay? So let's make A 3 and B 2. Now, A has the value 3, B has the value 2. So A is definitely greater than B. So A greater than B, this condition is true. So this line gets executed. So what did we just witness? We witnessed a program making a decision by testing a certain condition, which is quite significant, right? As I said, that's what makes programs do smart things. Okay. Any questions here?
Ruth had a comment before you made that change in your values. She wanted to say, she suggested adding the else statement.
Okay. Yeah. So I was about to come to that next. So we can give it an alternative action, okay? Saying if the condition is true, do this. If the condition is not true, do that. We can also do that. That's called an if-else statement. Okay, sometimes we want to do something if a condition is true and nothing if the condition is not true. So that's a pure if statement that we just looked at. So as Ruth mentioned, yes, we do have a mechanism for specifying an alternative, and that is the if-else statement. So this time, if we read carefully, it says, if this condition is true, okay, do this. Else, now, here, if we come here, okay, obviously that means this condition is not true. How is that? Now, the way the if, else, or even the if works is that if the condition is false, then any statement or statements that are indented, okay, that are indented following this colon, if the condition is true, those statements will be executed. If the condition is false, those statements will be ignored. Okay, so that's why when this condition was false, this statement was ignored. Okay, and the statement execution simply moved on. Okay, and I can show that the execution actually skipped this statement and moved on by putting in another statement, print, okay, the condition was not true. Okay, so I ignored the print statement. Okay, this is the program talking to us. Okay. Okay. Actually, we will be better off. We'll be better off just using the else example. Let's do that. Let's go back to the slide and talk about the else.
There was a question from Sunny. Do we need to create a classroom with students in REPL in order for students to use the IDE? I haven't used Replit in the classroom. It may be possible. You can actually create accounts. Okay, Replit allows you to create an account. In fact, it encourages you to sign up. And then the advantage of that is you can save your files. You can exit, close your browser and shut down your computer, and you can go back the following day and sign in, and you will get back your files and you can run it. It should be possible. It should be possible to create a classroom with student accounts. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To view their work as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I just remembered one of my colleagues actually does that. He uses Replit for his homework assignments or programming exercises. And Replit also has an auto grading feature. So it will grade programming assignments automatically. It will compare the results with the expected results and will grade them. So if you're interested, you can Google auto grading with Replit. Or you can send me an email. I'll send you the details from my colleague. Okay, so getting back to the if statement, when we know what the alternative action should be, we can put that as a part of what we call the else clause. Okay, so this part is the else clause, what appears after the else colon. So if the condition is true, then this statement is executed. What happens to this statement? It shouldn't be executed because it's supposed to be executed when this condition is not true. So when this condition is true, this is executed. what appears after the else indented will be skipped, Whereas if the condition is false, okay, if A is not greater than B, then this is not executed, and we will simply, the program jumps to this print statement and executes that. Okay, and we'll see that happening in Replit. You can see it happening if you type that in. If A is greater than B, print A greater than B. Else, now use backspace. Okay, it'll take you to so that the line you type in is lined up with the if. The else is lined up vertically. Else. Okay. Now the indentation is back again, just like if colon, else colon also automatically indents. And I'll just copy that.
We have about 5 minutes remaining.
Right. Reminder, Terry. Okay, so now, okay, so if we run that, okay, if A is greater than B, if this is true, do that. If this is not true, do that. Okay, so that's how we simulate a fork in the road. Okay, so if we run it, I'll do one more thing. I'll just stop it. You can stop anytime, clear it. I'll just make it look a little bit nicer. Put a colon and a space there. Okay. All right, let's run. Okay. 10. The value of B, 12. A is not greater than B. Right? That's what we expected, didn't we? Now, if we run it again, now we make A 12 and B 10. So now this time, this was executed. This line was not executed. All right. So this is what we call a conditional statement, which is written as using an if and an else. And this, as an extension, okay, so here is an exercise for you to try. Write the Python code to input a number and display a message to indicate if it's a non-zero number or not. If it's a non-zero or not. So the condition will be testing if it's a non-zero or not. Okay? How do you think you'll be doing it? Instead of comparing A and B, we are just getting one number, okay? Just getting one number. The condition will change. So we can just say if A equals 0 or if A not equals 0, okay? Now the equal sign, in Python, you write equal by putting two equal signs. A is 0. Sorry, if A equals, else A is not. Okay, so now, 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 okay, All right, so I'll leave it to you to try it out. But remember, the equality, is indicated by using two equal signs. So as we say in Python, the equal sign is more equal than the equal that we've known all our lives.
I like it.
Okay, yeah. So moving on, since we only got a few minutes, and same in Java and C++, by the way. These are some of the common operators. So now that you've had your introduction to Python and programming, I guess, I don't know which one is more important. I guess the introduction to programming is probably has a more profound impact than Python, because it doesn't have to be Python, although I would say it should be Python if you are starting off. Okay. You can now just use other resources. There are plenty. There are some really good tutorial websites. Then there are videos on YouTube. And it's very easy to self-teach practically anything these days, except driving and flying. And I guess you could add a few, but programming, certainly, you can certainly teach yourself. Okay, there were a few other things. I mean, what I've been trying to teach you, or what I have managed to really, rush through in the last hour and 30 minutes or so, I teach it in about 5 weeks with 2 75-minute sessions per week for my CS1 class. So imagine how much pressure I've subjected your collective brains to in these last 90 minutes. So I apologize for that, but I hope you will take with you some of the useful stuff, and it will encourage you to learn more. And I'm always happy to answer any questions you might have, and help you and point you to any resources that you may find useful. So please feel free to email me.
Yes, there was a question from Vicky. If you could quickly mention tutorial sites for Python. A lot of folks are saying great job.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, there are so many. Tutorials Point is one. W3 Academy, W followed by the number 3.
Mm-hmm.
So you just Google W3 Academy. That's a great site. Code Academy.
Mm-hmm. CodeHS, code.org.
Yeah, code.org. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I hesitate to mention it because I might get accused of nepotism. But Khan Academy, videos, right? You'll find very useful, especially to direct your students to, because the Khan Academy videos are meant more for younger learners, but that's not to say that any of us older folks will not find them, useful. So yeah, just to mention some. And you go into YouTube, and in the search window in YouTube, type in tutorial for beginner Python or something like that, and you will see heaps. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks for your interest. I'm so glad that so many of you found time and felt interested to join this session. Do we know, Terry, how many people are in this session?
Currently, about 36, but you were up till about 70 at one point.
Right. I guess all those technical issues caused some people to leave, but still, I'm glad to have your company.
Yes.
And you're very welcome to email me. Are these presentations made available?
Yes. So I was going to say, if you email us the links, we are putting all of these slides on our Constellations website.
Okay.
As well as the recordings from each session will be on our Constellations YouTube channel.
Great. Okay. I'll email you a few links.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Khan.
Okay.
All right. If there's no other questions, you all, we're going to close out the session. Thank you so much for your engagement and your patience.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.